Good morning, North America. Welcome to Church Talk TV. Lively talk about life, church, and church life. I'm your co-host, Dr. Bill Tenney-Britton, and I'm joined, as usual, by my co-host, Dr. Kris Tenney-Britton, and we're broadcasting from our studio in Columbia, Missouri, the heartland of America. Say good morning, Kris.
Well, good morning, and welcome to Church Talk TV.
Bill and Kris Tenney-Britton here today to talk about how to elevate your church's SQ.
SQ? Are we going to go SQ?
We're SQ.
We're going SQ.
Oh, SQ you.
Oh, no, I can't believe you just said that. Well, we are going to talk about your church's spirituality quotient.
You know, like IQ, EQ, all those. The Q thing has become,
right.
Has become
now we're going to talk about SQ,
right.
but and that's an important topic.
It really is.
You know, right? Because a recent study has just come out, and these are 2024 numbers, say that 53% of congregations have not rebounded to their pre-COVID numbers. So 53%.
That's a lot of churches that have not come back.
Right. Aren't seeing their
right.
numbers.
Right.
And for many of those are churches. No, I don't want to say that. Okay, go ahead. You wanted to say something.
Right. Well, I was going to say, and overall in the U.S., the decline rate for church is 66%. 66% of all churches in the U.S. are in some state of decline, either serious decline or a little decline. And to be fair, that is actually better than the pre-COVID numbers. Pre-COVID numbers, the studies all showed about 85% of churches were in decline, so things are getting better, right? Not so much, because during COVID and since COVID, there have been thousands of churches have closed. And so, you know, the 66%, now, don't get me wrong, I keep hearing about churches that are growing, but there's a whole lot of churches that were not growing before that don't exist anymore. And so I'm not so sure that that's good news. But in any event, either way, if you're one of those churches, we want to talk to you. And the reality is even if you're a growing church, there's some question. How's your SQ? You know, the reality is that when I do consultations, when I talk to pastors, I talk to probably 100 pastors every single week on some level or another. Some of them really deep conversations. And what I hear over and over is that the rank and file member of their church members, they're hobbyists. They come to the clubhouse on Sundays to hang out with their friends and their family. They hear a rousing sermon, sing some great songs, and then that's the end of their Christianity until next week. I mean, really, it's a hobby. Right. It's just no more than that. They're not effective disciples of Jesus Christ. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, no, I'm just laughing because my hobby, one of them at least, is crocheting, and I'm thinking I engage my hobby more than so many church hobbyists do.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And here's what as I listen to this, read the stats,
right,
and I talk to these pastors, it dawned on me a couple of weeks ago when I was getting ready for putting this together, is that I don't know if this is the root cause, but it's certainly one of the root causes of the state we find our churches in today.
I agree.
Is that the spirituality in our congregations, our SQ, is skewed. It's pretty low. It's down there, and that's a problem.
Right. Well, you know, the number one recommendation I make every consultation I do is you got to become praying people, and you've got to put some kind of spiritual practices into place. And people are like, what? You know, no. And it's like, no, if you don't put praying first, you're never going to revitalize. You're never going to transform or transition. So that is that bottom line SQ. In our tradition, the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, as well as lots of others, you have search committees because you call ministers, not like Methodist Church where they appoint, United Methodist Church where they appoint pastors, but these churches have search committees. Same thing. I've always said to a search committee, the number one piece that you start with is prayer. And even if you don't have anything to do, you don't think you have anything to do, you're not looking at minister profiles, you're not interviewing people, whatever, you have to get together to pray. That prayer, that spiritual quotient has to be in place and growing, not just I don't even like saying in place. The practices have to be in place so that you can be growing.
But therein lies the problem. Don't get me wrong. I love what you're saying.
Go ahead.
But there's a problem, not with that, but there's a problem overall, and that is that we have institutionalized spirituality.
Right.
The institutionalization of America has fell fair and square into the church. We turn to the government to take care of our retirement, and among other things. We turn to the healthcare institution to take care of our healthcare. We turn to the schools to educate our kids, and we turn to the church to handle our spirituality, so that we go on Sunday morning and we expect to be, being given, here you are, here's your dose of spirituality, and we go home. And again, it goes back to the hobbyist, but that there's just this understanding, and you've heard it. I know we both have, where someone walks in the church and says, "I'm just not being fed."
Oh God.
And it's like, the problem is that you're not eating what we're providing. You've got tight jawed, and you're not going to take a bite.
And your spirit is so ugly and closed off. I mean, really, a lot of the people I hear say that their spirits are ugly and they're closed off, so they're not in a place where they can receive. But I really want to hold us, because I think people come to church, if it's not just for the hobby, if it's not because this is what I do or whatever, if they're trying to find spirituality, they're not going to find it on a Sunday morning. Because spirituality is it's a practice. It's something that you do. It's not something that I have spirituality. It's like, I have good health.
I am. I'm a spiritual. How about you? Or
yeah, right. Because my church has SQ, right? Okay. Yeah. While we're doing poetry, and that is this piece to me, is that when I talk about spirituality, I really am talking about people's spirits. I'm talking about what's inside of them, how that guides them, and that encompasses practices. So the question is, where do you learn that?
You don't get that from 1 or 2 hours a week.
No, and we don't even. Most churches, we're not doing that with people. We're not helping them to learn centering, I love one of my pastors that I've worked with. There's a prayer practice, a spiritual practice called T.R.O.U.B.L.E. And it's where it's a step, like you pray with, step forward twice and once back. Anyways, it's an old way of centering and moving into prayer. And he took and taught it to his congregation, and the congregation was up, and not really a conga line going there, but they were T.R.O.U.B.L.E.ing around their sanctuary, and that's just amazing to me. But that's part of that. It's not necessary. You can't feed everything to people in that little bit of sitting and whatnot. But he wove it into his message that week, and then and so they were up, they were moving. Those who couldn't be up, there were ways that they could move and do Tripodia. I guess it was Trihandia or something like that. So, that's what I'm talking about, are these actual spiritual practices. And if people are if we're talking about the institutionalization of spirituality, we are failing big time, and we're failing folks, and we're failing the kingdom.
Well, and part of the problem with all that is because, as you kind of point out, and I've said, is that you can't get it in an hour or two a week. That it is an ongoing practice,
daily practice,
and really your spirituality isn't a sweater you put on or a hat you wear. It has to become a part of you, and the only way that anything like that becomes a part of you is ongoing practice, ongoing input, ongoing transformational stuff.
Well, yeah, places, right? Yeah. Practices, places that you try it on, where you learn more, that you get challenged. I'm going to do this little ad for my Prayer Power Network, right? One of the ministries of Effective Church Group is the Prayer Power Network. We meet on a weekly basis. Each week, I teach a new spiritual practice for our members to try out if they want to. And every week we have check-in time. How did it go? What was working for you? What didn't work for you? And trying to hone and build
spending time in prayer. You actually spend time in prayer.
We do spend time in prayer. I think it's pretty amazing, of course. because I developed it. But that comes after literally decades of working with churches and working with ministers and working with church leaders who've wanted more, but we just don't have the mechanisms yet in churches to do that.
And so here's a tool for you, and the link is down below. But in any event, or up above, I don't know, it's there somewhere with the description. The link to the Prayer Power Network, and you can check it out, be a part of that. Get your members to be a part of it. What an incredible tool, because it is a way of training our members and giving them tools, which is really what I want to talk about. We want to talk about how do you raise your spiritual quotient in your congregation. Because the bottom line is, folks, you can't do it in an hour a week. You certainly can't do it in a 20 to 30 minute sermon.
No.
Not even a 45-minute sermon. That it has to be beyond that. And I just want to point out, the sermon, and we put a lot of emphasis. You do a lot of work on that sermon.
Yep.
You put that sermon together. You swap bullets on it. You try to get it good. And get the right stuff in there and so on. You get it just right. You work hard on the delivery, and almost every study I've seen says that the congregation can't remember what was preached after Tuesday.
I can't even preach.
What I preached after Tuesday.
Like on Sunday evening at 5 p.m. What was that about again? No.
But it's like it's gone. And, so even if we were trying to instill practices and helping people to develop a deep spiritual life, that it's gone by Tuesday. And so we want to talk about the need for tools. We want to talk about the need for making spirituality relevant. And we want to talk about the need for building and maintaining momentum in people's spiritual lives. And so the 3 points, we'll tell you what we're going to tell you. And so let's talk about the tools. And we talk about some of this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And the first part is, folks, your sermon has to be relevant. It has to address the problems or share the tools to reach people's aspirations of those in the pews, those who are coming. And we're not going to belabor this point, right. But if it doesn't apply to their everyday life, if you haven't given them a tool so they can sleep better tonight, to get over the problems, to live a full and abundant life, we've missed it. So that's where it starts. But here's the tool, or at least part of the solution to that. How do we get what we're doing on Sunday to translate into later in the week, so that they take the hard work and the training and the spiritual heart of the gospel that you've given them? How do we get that extended? How do we build some momentum with that? And one of the best ways we found is to create a Bible study that they can take home. Remember the little sheets they did in the schools? Well, in schools they did weekly reader.
Oh wow, yeah. In Sunday school they did leaflets.
Leaflets, right? The leaflets.
Isn't that what? That's what we called them, wasn't it?
I think so.
Don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, they were there for the Sunday school kids to take home, and so they could extend the learning later on the week, because we all know that learning is a repetition thing.
Right.
And so how do we do that with your sermons? By creating Bible studies. Now I got to tell you, I've done this since I did, I think, all 40 years of my ministry. I provided some sort of a Bible study, fill in the blank kind of thing for all my congregations. But it took anywhere from a half hour when I was really on a roll after I created my sermon. It took me a half hour, and sometimes it took a couple of hours, because there were always 10 questions. I like 10 questions because you could divide it up into 2 questions a day or whatever. But it's also just a nice round number, and it fills up a sheet really nicely. And they're open-ended questions, right, and all that. And I would do a couple questions about the Bible scriptures, a couple questions about the sermon content, and always the last one was a call to action. But it would take me hours, and it's like, I don't want to put that on you. So let me take that off you. ChatGPT. Go ahead. What?
We need stock in ChatGPT.
That would be great. The problem is
or an affiliate program.
It's a nonprofit, so it doesn't work.
I was thinking affiliate.
Not a publicly owned corporation, even though Microsoft has really invested heavily on it.
Yeah, I know.
But anyway, here's the deal, folks: is you could go to ChatGPT, and you open it up. I recommend the professional version, but you don't have to. The 3.5 is what's currently
just get
free.
started, right? I mean, just try it out.
And take your sermon needs to be done. If you do a manuscript, you just cut and paste a whole manuscript in there. If you do an outline, you do the whole outline. If you're doing it off the top of your head, and you know what your theme is, you put your theme in, you put your scripture in, and then the prompt is something along the lines, I'm creating a Bible study. Please create a Bible study, a 10-question Bible study, based on my sermon and this scripture passage. And you put the scripture passage in there, of course. You don't have to, just a reference, it can find it. It's amazing what it can do. And I want 10 questions. I want 4 questions or 5 questions that are from the scriptures. And 5 open-ended questions. And I want 4 open-ended questions from the sermon topic. And I want 1 call to action that is relevant and will help the person doing the Bible study to put this into practice. And you know what happens? Yeah, that's right. It spits out 10 questions. And if you don't like all the questions, say, hey, I don't like number 3. Please replace it with something else.
Okay, so I want to just slightly defer with you, and maybe you're here with me. For me, 10's a lot. I want to give them 1 per day. I don't want to overwhelm them. And there are some of us overachievers that if you give me 10, I'm going to try to get through 10. But I advocate for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so that they'd come back on Sunday. Okay. And you can even
12.
start a small group.
So 2 a day for 6 days?
No. Because then, and me, again, the way I write my studies is you would actually have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday would kind of be a roundup to look back through the week and kind of like an accountability. And then you make sure that you have a class or a small group that's meeting Sunday morning where you can go, here's the accountability piece, and kind of do the check-in around that. Or come to the
Prayer Power
Network sessions on Tuesday evenings. Yeah,
you can do that.
There it is.
So,
okay,
so here's the deal. Whether it's 2 questions or 10 questions or 12 questions or 7 questions, whatever it is, it can spit it out, and now you've got a tool that you can hand out to your folks. I always handed them out with the bulletin. We had bulletins back then.
Yeah.
But if with the worship sheets, or just put them on the pews as they pick one up, take it home. Not everyone will, but you'll have people who will begin to become dependent on this, and you are extending the value of your sermon later on in the week with almost no energy expended whatsoever, and creating something that allows them to begin to take what they've learned on Sunday and put it into practice and go deeper with it, building up their spirituality quotient during the week.
Okay, so I want to toss these pieces out that we need to give people something in their hands every week. And so to me, I'm not into putting them on the side whether they can take it or not. It is about building expectations. And so saying that this spirituality is important. What we do on Sundays matters each day, not that it matters for your life, for the life of your family, for the life of our community, for the world. And so I want to put it in their hands. And if you put some kind of announcements, because when I see announcements flying up there, or when I use a QR code for announcements or whatever, like I forget to look at whatever it is I downloaded. And there are some people that are very paper, they could use it in bookmark, hopefully in their Bibles. So, anyways, I want it in their hands, and I want to make sure we're handing it to it. So there's the one piece. And the other is, again, and we've had this conversation over the years, and it really was one of the places that we kind of, we've merged, but we were kind of diverged about the importance of prayer and spirituality and teaching that. And so one of what we've got to do every week has got to do something with spiritual practice. And it's not just teaching it, it's helping them build it. Bible study is one thing. How are we teaching them to use their Bibles? So that's in addition to the Bible study, I think is where I'm trying to get to. How are we teaching them to pray? Not just writing them down these rote pieces or, handing them daily bread or whatever, but how are we helping them to do that? And we can practice that during our services. But then part of what we're giving them to take home is how they can use it.
Wonderful segue there. You don't know you made a segue, but here's part of the problem. You mentioned daily bread and guideposts are both there,
Right.
and I don't want to denigrate either of them.
No, but that's how I started to pray and learn more scripture when I was a baby Christian.
That said, is that if you open up your guideposts for today, whatever it is, or your daily bread, you're probably going to find a little tidbit that is absolutely, totally irrelevant to your life.
Thank you.
Okay? It doesn't address the big problems in life. It is going through typically either a lectionary or the uniform Bible study plan, whatever. But the bottom line is that it's not terribly relevant. And here's the other thing: is spirituality, by and large, is not considered relevant.
Right.
It's an add-on. It's okay, now I got to do this. It's something else. You're moving me from a hobby to at least an avocation, maybe a vocation, and now, and how is that relevant to my life?
Right.
And so one of the things that would be really helpful there, Pastor, is if we help make the spiritual practices, their spirituality, actually relevant to their life. And of course, going back, your sermon, it starts there. That's sort of the cornerstone. It's the cornerstone of this whole episode and a lot of what we talk about. But so the relevant sermon. But now, how do we make the spirituality practices relevant, as opposed to just learn to breathe, learn to center, whatever? So why? What's the point? So how do we do that? Go ahead.
Well, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there are so many different things that you can do and you can try. Again, making it real. It's not just relevant; it's practical as well, right? So it's long lasting. So on a Sunday when you have communion, you could have bread bakers like nearby. Not bread. What are those called?
Bread makers.
Bread makers?
Bread makers, yes.
Bread makers. I was thinking not bread makers or baker makers,
right.
But okay. Yeah, a bread maker. And you could have bread out there and you might not be making and using it for communion. Maybe you are, but it's the smell.
Right. If you start the bread during the Sunday school hour or the hour before, so that it's actually in the baking process by the time they show up.
Then you could, stuff. But, how do you use smells and bring smells in so that when they're at home, then there's a connection. Not that they're likely making bread, but or just, I don't know, there are different ways of doing that so that what you've got here, using those senses, can practical, how are we making those kind of connections? So both relevant, well, and relative too. So yeah, relevant and practical. How are we helping with that?
If they're not practical, they're not going to do them. That's just a reality. What you say that your favorite book that I wrote is High Voltage Spirituality, because it's a compendium of spiritual practices, and it's divided up, and everyone has a code. How much time does it take? Where can you do it? Can you do it in a group? Can you do it individually? And there's an index. So I have 10 minutes. I can do this, and whatever. So I mean, that makes it practical for the situation.
Right.
Absolutely. So, but I want to, and if it's not practical, you're going nowhere with it.
Right. They're not going to use it.
But the other thing is,
they have to sneak it in on them
right,
sometimes.
exactly.
Be subversive.
That's right.
Go ahead.
So, but the relevant part is that's one of the biggest disconnects that we have in the church and with the people in the pew.
Right.
Is, so what?
Right.
You want me to journal. So what?
Right.
Why? How is this helping me? You're I don't want to say wasting my time, but it sometimes feels like a waste of time, Pastor. I got things I need to do. So how do we make that relevant? And since you're on ChatGPT anyway, I'm going to help you make things relevant for that. All right? Because you just spent 3 minutes creating this prompt to do their Bible study of 7 questions, 10 questions, or 6 questions, whatever it is. All right? Now, if you're assuming your sermon was relevant and dealt with some issue that people are actually experiencing in their life, now ask ChatGPT to create a daily, not a 6-day, a daily, not a 5-day, an every stinking day devotional that is relevant to what the sermon is calling for, relevant to your folks' lives, because you know your people. You know what they need. And so you create a prompt to go something like this: I need a devotional to invite people to make their spirituality practical and relevant. Please create a 300-word devotional. Begin with a title, with a scripture passage, a anecdote, and then a open-ended question and a call to action to help them to make this practical and relevant. And it will amazingly do that, and you'll have done something that guideposts and Our Daily Bread can't do, and that is creating something for your people in their setting that is relevant to them. Exactly.
Okay, so you are tossing a lot of stuff out here, right? I mean, I can see eyes already swimming out there, ChatGPT, blah, 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 prompts, what's a prompt, blah, blah, blah. So don't you have seminars from time to time? Didn't you just have a seminar?
I just did a webinar, a 2-day conference on ChatGPT.
They need to keep some, I want y'all to just be watching him, because he can do this. And I was thinking maybe it'll be fun if we, not this week, but do one of those kind of Bible study prompts to show them what can come out.
Sure.
Why they should learn to use ChatGPT and all that other good
stuff.
So
we want to do that next week?
Yeah, why not? We can show you what we're talking about. We'll have a Bible study for you.
Right. We'll do part 2. So here's my call to action for you. Okay, this is being done for. This is February 28th. This is the February 28th issue of 2024. Edition. Episode. There we are. And so, if you are interested in participating in this, send me your sermon topic for this week, and we'll go backwards, because I can't imagine you get the other one in advance.
Yeah.
So
no.
Send me your sermon topic, your sermon title, a theme, or if you've got a manuscript or an outline, send that to me. Sermon title, and the scripture passage that you're using, the scripture passage you're using, send that to me before the end of the week. And we'll choose one of those at random.
Make it a good one.
Yeah, make it a good one. That's right. And we will walk you through how to create next week's episode, how to do this Bible study stuff, and how to do a devotional, a daily devotional. And we may throw in a couple other tidbits, some bonuses of what else you can do with your sermon and your scripture passage to leverage the technology, but also to get more and more people involved, and perhaps even showing up to hear what you're offering.
Yes, because they want. People have a hole in their hearts. I mean, really,
lives,
there's that.
Right.
All right. I mean, something is missing, or something
Pascal
is wrong.
said that, I believe it was.
No, but it wasn't. I don't believe. But anyways,
it was. Pascal said that we have a God-shaped hole
I was
in our
thinking
heart.
it was somebody else. Okay. Anyways, pastors, I talk with too many of the people who are in your pews, and they are missing out on something. They are so flippin' hungry, and it's not a new sermon, a new way of this or that. They're looking for something deep within their souls.
Relevant and valuable.
Right, and that can change their life, or can help them get through life, that can just help them make it through. And they think maybe it's the church, they think maybe that, and if you don't know this, please talk to me, that there is one who makes the difference, and it is the relationship that we have with him. And that's what we in the church ultimately, that's ultimately what we have a responsibility to do, is to help people come to know Jesus, to invite them, to introduce him to him,
and to make it real,
and to make it real, to bring it home. We are so almost out of time. The last word on this is accountability, and we kind of touched on that. Is that spirituality doesn't just happen, and praying doesn't just happen. How are we helping people? How are we holding people accountable? How are we helping people to find places and people that will hold them accountable? Who's holding you accountable for your spirituality, for raising your spiritual quotient.
So if you do the devotional thing, if you do the Bible study thing, one of the easiest way to hold them accountable is they're leaving, saying, "Great sermon, Pastor," or it was very restful, and asking them, "So, how did you do with your devotions this week? How many of the questions did you get done in the questionnaire that I sent, or in the questionnaire in the Bible study I sent home last week?" Just asking those questions every week will help people put feet to the work you're doing.
It's an expectation.
It's an expectation. Hey, and you don't have to be ugly about it. You don't want to be ugly about it. It's just I asked it. So, hey, I really like my Wednesday devotional. What do you think of it? Devotional. All right. Hey, we are out of time. We'll see you next week. Hey, if you got a sermon, and you want to see how to put this together with ChatGPT, send it our way.
And check out the Prayer Power Network.
Links down below.
All right.
See you next week.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.